Hello lovelies, my name is Eric and welcome to my YouTube channel. In this video we're going to be talking about the tarot, this mysterious deck of cards. So I wanted to talk about tarot because there's always something to talk about with tarot, which is part of why I love it. You know, there's always more to learn and more to discover, you know, and we can always build on our understanding of the tarot. It's such a broad system that incorporates so many different elements, which is part of why I love it, and part of why I think it's got the longevity to be part of your practice for a really long time, because there is so much to it, and you can always deepen your understanding of the tarot, you know, and nobody has really mastered, I think, every aspect of it, because there are so many aspects to it. But I wanted to talk about the mechanics of tarot more so today than anything about the history or anything like that, which I'm sure there's plenty of information on YouTube about those things. But I wanted to talk about my relationship with the tarot and what the mechanics are that are at play when I'm using them, or what I think is happening. Of course, this is always a topic that's up for debate. This is, you know, I guess UPG in a way, or SPG or something. So I'm just sort of sharing my experiences. So one question that I often get asked when I go to psychic fairs or psychic events, or when I'm applying for jobs or roles as a psychic reader, I often get this question of, when did you realize that you were psychic? And it makes me laugh a little bit, because to me, tarot is not necessarily a psychic act. This is something that, like I say, I've studied. It's a scholarly pursuit for me. I've learned about how the Kabbalah influences the tarot, and astrology influences the tarot, and I've learned the prescribed meanings of the cards. You know, when I was 15, my mom gave me a copy of the Mythic Tarot, and it was all about the Greek mythology, and it was very much still based in the Rider-Waite, though, so it was easy to then sort of compare the two decks and sort of get a handle on the Rider-Waite through that initial starting deck that I had. Of course, I always recommend the Rider-Waite to beginners. I think it is the best deck for beginners, and it's definitely my favorite and the one that has stuck with me for the longest time. But I don't necessarily think of tarot as a spiritual act. I've memorized the meanings of the cards, I lay them out, and then I take the advice that comes through from them. And I definitely think, tarot is meant to be an all-encompassing system, so ideally every human experience is encompassed by these 78 cards. It's meant to be a complete system of human experience, and I think that's why the advice is so useful to us, because the advice should be useful to everyone. And I think, you know, a lot of these people who try to debunk readers or debunk psychics, they do it by saying that what we're making are Barnum statements. So these are statements that could be applied equally to any person. Like saying, you've had a lot of trials throughout your life. Yes, everybody has had a lot of trials throughout their lives, and that is a statement that's applicable to everyone. But to me, one example that I can give is that when a bunch of cups come up in a reading, I will say to the querent, are you drinking enough water? Because most of us aren't, and it's good advice. Most people can get something useful and an action to take from that piece of advice, which has just come through to me because I've got a load of cups cards on the table. So that's something that, I think is a perfect example of how the tarot is really relevant to everybody, and its advice should be applicable to everybody, because these cards are meant to portray human experiences. I'm drinking water out of my glorious Digimon cup, which one of my best friends bought for me from a thrift store, which is awesome. It makes the water taste better, you know, because it's Digimon, you see. So I think as well, this sort of brings up why it's so important for querents to have a topic or have a question. I always say to them, you can share it with me, you don't have to. I can see what we glean from the cards, and if you want to ask more pointed questions at the end, you can. This isn't so easy when I'm doing online readings, though, because really I just get that initial message from the person and have to sort of work from that. There isn't a lot of room for back and forth when I'm in that kind of format. But it's kind of I think it was Kellyanne Maddox who sort of put this forward to me the first time, is that you don't go to a doctor and say, I'm not going to tell you any of my symptoms, I want you to figure it out, you're the doctor and I want to see how good you are. And you should never do the same thing with a psychic or a reader. Because while the advice in the tarot is universal and useful to everyone and in every situation, to be able to tailor the advice from the tarot to you more specifically it's important that we have that topic of conversation or that question there. So I want to talk about like what's actually happening then when we read the tarot. How is it that I can read in person but also online? What are the mechanics at play here? Now, when I'm reading in person, I will always get the querent to shuffle the cards. And to me, this is kind of like a passive magical act. The cards are picking up the aura, I guess, excuse me, the aura of the person, and using that to sort of determine where they'll land during the spread. When I'm reading for distance, though, or reading with a querent who isn't shuffling the cards, I think of it as an active magical act. And I think these two ideas are really put forward well by what Rune Emerson always says about how light moves the dark. And that's always been really helpful to me. So when I'm doing that active magic, I definitely think of it as me imposing my will upon the cards to show me what it is that I'm looking for. Whereas when I'm working with a client sitting across from me, it's more of a passive thing. We allow the cards to fall where they will, based on the sort of aura or energy of the person that's shuffling with the cards. Now this does also bring up the issue of sassy cards. I think this is great as a meme, as a joke, and I often share these as a meme. But to me, like, if your cards are actually coming back at you with insults and like calling you out for being a bitch and all this sort of stuff, if that's actually happening, you need to be working with your mechanics and figure out a way to better impose your control over the tools that you're using, because they should be aiding you, not treating you like that. That's not a very healthy relationship to actually have with your cards. I think it's great as a joke though, so it's a lot of fun. But yeah, if your cards are actually being sassy at you all the time, I'd definitely say to have a look at your mechanics and how you're working with them, because you might find there's a better way to get clearer messages from them that are maybe not so harmful to you. Now, what I'm talking about Rune Emerson and Light Moves the Dark and all that sort of stuff, Rune's book, Nothing But a Pack of Cards, has been out for 3 years now, which is amazing. I can't believe he hasn't written another book for me yet. I'm sure it's coming. But it's been out for 3 years, so if you haven't read it, shame on you. Go and buy a copy, because it's absolutely phenomenal and will definitely change your relationship with the tarot. So check that out. Now, the last thing that I wanted to talk about is in terms of the functionality of tarot. So like I said, it's not necessarily a spiritual experience. I do tend to turn it into one by incorporating those magical elements, but I don't think that's necessarily required. I'm going to leave a link in the description below to a TED Talk by Peter Struck, and it's all about ancient divination in a modern sort of context, and he talks a bunch about just a whole bunch about like past divination systems and all this sort of stuff, and how like the mechanics are that are at play from like a psychological model. And I really enjoyed that talk, because he does talk about how like when we're using divinatory methods, we allow our conscious mind to take a break from chewing on the topic or the problem that we're facing, and allows our subconscious mind, our intuition, to make a snap judgment. And like 2 times out of 3, intuition does typically choose the right answer. So like it's, you know, a pretty good odds there. So having that divinatory process alongside your cognitive thinking allows for other options and other perspectives to come through that maybe wouldn't have been available to you unless you had sought out that oracle, that person to read for you. So definitely check out his video. I will leave a link in the description below. Of course, there is also a link in the description to my Etsy store, as always, if you do decide that you want to work with me. But you guys know how all of that stuff works. So I think that's all that I really want to say at this point about the tarot. If you have any questions for me or further discussion points, definitely hit me up and let me know. And leave a comment with your relationship with the cards. What are the mechanics that are at play when you're reading them? Do you think of it as more of an active or a passive kind of phenomenon? I would love to hear what you guys have to say. One last thing as well, I am only uploading one video this week, and it will be the same next week and probably the week after. I'm off to Melbourne to attend the Castlemaine Pagan meetup, so if you guys are in that area, definitely come along and have a play. It's a long way for me to go for coffee, but I'm hoping to meet some really awesome people there, and some really awesome witches. So if you guys are in Melbourne, definitely consider making your way out to Castlemaine to attend this little meetup. It should be a lot of fun and some really interesting people there. So yeah, one video this week, one video next week, probably only one the following week as well, just while I'm sort of wrapping things up. And of course the shop, the Etsy store, will be on holiday while I am away, as I will not be able to post things out to people and stuff like that. So I will be taking a break from the shop as well. So if you guys are looking to purchase anything, try to do it this week, because there may not be that option for me to do it once I have gone away, and I won't be back for a week. So yeah, that option is there as well. But I just wanted to slide that in here at the end. So I'm going to try to edit this in and see if this works. But yeah, thanks so much, you guys. So as always, I hope this video has been entertaining, or at the very least informative, and I hope that you guys are well. Mwah. Bye.